Did you know that, until last year, nearly 40 cents of every dollar a Canadian family spent on processed foods could be traced back to ingredients or brands owned by just a handful of American megacorporations? This staggering figure, buried deep within trade reports, went largely unnoticed by the average shopper pushing their cart down the aisles of a Loblaws or Sobeys. It was simply the background noise of a deeply integrated North American food system, a quiet testament to the economic interconnectedness of our two nations. But today, on August 25, 2025, that statistic has become a battle cry, a symbol of a movement that is radically reshaping what and how Canadians eat. The quiet acceptance has been replaced by a loud and determined rejection. This isn't just about consumer choice anymore, it has become a form of grassroots economic activism playing out in real time. The once predictable flow of goods across the 49th parallel has been disrupted not by tariffs, trade agreements, but by a collective decision made in Kitchen's grocery stores from St. John's to Victoria. This essay explores the far-reaching consequences of Canada's unofficial yet powerfully effective boycott of American food giants. We will delve into the reasons behind this national movement, the chaos it has unleashed within our supply chains, and the profound economic shifts it is forcing upon both countries. What started as whispers of discontent has now grown into a roar that is emptying shelves, bankrupting businesses. The scale of this consumer-led movement has caught economists, corporate executives completely by surprise. The first signs of trouble were subtle, easily dismissed as statistical noise. A slight dip in sales for a popular American soda brand in the Maritimes. A few more cartons of a Canadian-made yogurt being sold in Quebec. But these small ripples soon grew into a tidal wave. The movement, now known colloquially as the pantry patriotism, began without a formal leader or a central organization. It spread through community Facebook groups, text message chains, and conversations over backyard fences. It was a grassroots rebellion fueled by a shared sentiment that something needed to change. Canadians began to look at their grocery lists, not just as a matter of taste or price, but as a ballot they could cast every single week. The rebellion wasn't loud, it was the quiet, deliberate act of leaving one product on the shelf and picking up another. This quiet rebellion has transformed the Canadian grocery store into a landscape of stark contrasts. On one side of the aisle you might find shelves overflowing with American-branded breakfast cereals, their bright boxes collecting a thin layer of dust as shoppers walk right past them. On the other side, the section for Canadian milled oats and locally produced granolas is often picked clean by mid-afternoon. Store managers who once relied on sophisticated algorithms to predict inventory needs are now scrambling to adapt to this unpredictable, emotion-driven shopping behavior. The old rules no longer apply, and the once orderly world of retail logistics has been thrown into a state of managed chaos, a daily struggle to keep up with a national change of heart. The atmosphere inside these stores is palpably different. There's a new level of scrutiny among shoppers, a sense of purpose in their selections. You can see people stopping to read labels more carefully, not just for nutritional information, but for the Product of Canada designation. The boycott did not emerge from a vacuum. Its seeds were sown in the fertile ground of years of simmering political tensions between Ottawa and Washington. Disputes over softwood lumber dairy tariffs, differing approaches to international climate agreements created a persistent undercurrent of frustration among many Canadians. The feeling grew that Canada was being taken for granted, its economic and political sovereignty undermined by its larger neighbor. These high-level political disagreements trickled down into public consciousness. People wanted to assert Canadian independence in a tangible way. When diplomatic channels seemed to fail, many citizens turned to the one area where they felt they had direct control, their own purchasing power. Beyond the political sphere, a parallel movement focused on health and food purity was gaining momentum. Pesticides, growth hormones, genetically modified organisms that are permitted in the American food system but face stricter regulations or outright bans in Canada and Europe. High-fructose corn syrup, artificial dyes, and other additives became a frequent topic of discussion among health-conscious consumers. This created a powerful narrative that positioned Canadian food as inherently safer and more wholesome. The choice became simple in the minds of many. Why risk feeding your family products with questionable additives when a trusted Canadian alternative was available right next to it on the shelf? The convergence of these political and health concerns created a perfect storm. The boycott allowed Canadians to feel they were taking a stand on multiple fronts with a single action. Rejecting an American brand was simultaneously a protest against perceived unfair trade practices and a choice for what was believed to be a healthier lifestyle. This dual motivation gave the movement its incredible strength and broad appeal. For the average Canadian shopper, the weekly grocery run has transformed from a routine chore into a frustrating and often expensive ordeal. The most immediate and visible impact is the sight of empty shelves. Entire sections that once held iconic American brands now sit barren for days. Finding simple staples has become a treasure hunt. Certain types of pasta sauce, children's snacks, specific brands of frozen dinners. This scarcity has forced consumers to be more flexible and creative, but it has also caused widespread frustration. Many families have abandoned old household favorites and completely rethought meal planning around what's available that day. Disruption has led to significant price hikes, adding more stress for families already facing inflation. Demand for Canadian products is soaring, but domestic producers can't scale up fast enough. That imbalance has pushed local prices higher. Retailers facing losses from unsold American inventory are trying to recoup costs. The result? A painful squeeze on household budgets. Grocery bills are now a source of anxiety. The boycott's impact extends far beyond the visible chaos in grocery aisles. It has sent shockwaves through the entire North American supply chain. For decades, this chain was a model of efficiency. American farms grew produce specifically for Canadian markets. U.S. factories produced goods with packaging and labels tailored for Canadian regulations. Now, that intricate network is fracturing. Canadian trucking companies that once had lucrative contracts to transport goods north from California are seeing business dry up. Canadian trucking companies that once had lucrative contracts to transport goods north from Florida are seeing business dry up. Warehouses near the border that specialized in cross-docking American imports are laying off staff. The boycott has revealed how deeply intertwined the two economies were, and how painful the process of decoupling can be. In the United States, the consequences have been devastating for specific sectors. Lettuce farmers are hit hard. Berry farmers are hit hard. Farms in California feel the blow. Overnight, massive orders were canceled. Farmers now face a catastrophic glut of produce planted months earlier. They are left with two terrible options: sell their crops at a massive loss on the domestic market. Multi-generational farming families speak of impending bankruptcy and betrayal as a reliable market vanished almost overnight. Conversely, Canadian producers face the opposite problem, an overwhelming surge in demand. A cheesemaker in rural Quebec, once a small artisanal producer, is now getting calls from national grocery chains begging for pallets. If there was one single moment that crystallized the power and reach of the boycott, it was the Great Ketchup Crisis of May 2025. For decades, one particular American ketchup brand had been an undisputed icon in Canada, a staple in nearly every refrigerator. Its disappearance was gradual at first, but then it became startlingly abrupt. A shopper in Vancouver posted a photo on social media of an entirely empty ketchup aisle, save for a few lonely bottles of a Canadian competitor. The caption read, "Looks like Canada has chosen its side in the condiment wars." The post went viral within hours, shared hundreds of thousands of times, #ketchup curtain memes proliferated. News outlets across the country dispatched reporters to supermarkets to capture footage of the empty shelves. The story resonated because it was so relatable. It took a high-concept economic boycott and distilled it into the absence of a single, beloved product. The vanishing ketchup became a rallying cry, motivating even those who had been passive observers to join the cause. The American company behind the brand was caught completely flat-footed. Their initial response was a tone-deaf corporate statement about temporary supply chain disruptions, which only fueled public mockery and accusations that they were out of touch. The economic repercussions of the boycott are now being felt deeply on both sides of the border, redrawing the map of North American trade. In the United States, the U.S. Department of Agriculture has reported a significant downturn in food exports to Canada, a multi-billion-dollar hit that is disproportionately affecting border states and agricultural hubs. Major American food conglomerates, once seen as invincible titans of the industry, are facing shareholder revolts as their quarterly earnings reports reflect the dramatic loss of the Canadian market. Companies like Kraft Heinz, General Mills, and PepsiCo have seen their stock prices tumble, forcing them to announce layoffs and reconsider their international strategies. For American workers, the consequences are direct and painful. In food processing plants in states like Ohio, thousands of jobs have been cut. The story of a closing corn processing facility in Illinois, which lost its largest Canadian buyer, became a symbol of the human cost of this trade dispute. These job losses are creating political pressure in the U.S., with local politicians and union leaders calling on Washington to intervene and mend the fractured relationship with Canada. In Canada, the economic story is one of painful transition and potential opportunity. While consumers grapple with higher prices, the boycott is sparking a renaissance in Canadian food manufacturing. The federal government, seeing the shift, has announced new loan programs and grants to help Canadian businesses scale up to meet domestic demand. This is leading to a surge in investment in new processing facilities, greenhouses, and agricultural technology. As we move through the latter half of 2025, it is becoming clear that the boycott is not a fleeting trend, but a fundamental and potentially permanent reshuffling of the Canadian food industry. The changes we are witnessing are likely to have lasting effects on everything from consumer habits to national food security. Canadians are rediscovering their own domestic brands and agricultural heritage. A new generation is growing up with a different set of staple brands in their pantry products that are sourced and made within their own country. This shift in consumer loyalty, if it holds, could redefine the Canadian marketplace for decades to come, creating a formidable barrier to re-entry for the once dominant American companies. This movement is also forcing a critical national conversation about food security. For years, Canada relied on the seamless efficiency of the North American supply chain. The boycott, by disrupting that flow, has served as a stark wake-up call. It has exposed the vulnerability of depending so heavily on another nation for essential goods. As a result, there is growing political and public support for policies aimed at increasing Canada's food self-sufficiency. This includes investment in all-season greenhouse technology, support for local abattoirs and processing plants, a renewed focus on buy local initiatives that go far beyond a simple trend. The grocery sector itself is being forced to evolve. Loblaws, Sobeys, Metro are fundamentally rethinking their business models. The story of the Great Canadian Food Boycott of 2025 is a powerful testament to a simple truth in our consumer-driven world. Every purchase is a vote. It demonstrates how millions of individual choices guided by a shared sense of purpose can coalesce into a force capable of challenging multinational corporations and altering the course of international trade. This was not a movement orchestrated by politicians or decreed by law. It was a spontaneous, grassroots uprising that began with a simple question asked in kitchens across the country: where does our food really come from, and what does buying it support? The answers to that question have shaken the foundations of a multi-billion-dollar industry. We have seen how this movement has reshaped our grocery stores, creating scarcity and creating opportunity. We have explored the deep-seated political concerns, the health concerns, and we have witnessed the dramatic economic consequences for farmers, workers, companies on both sides of the border. From the symbolic vanishing of a beloved ketchup brand to the daily struggles of families trying to balance their budgets, the boycott has touched nearly every aspect of Canadian life. It serves as a compelling case study in the power of collective action in the 21st century. We invite you to be part of the ongoing conversation. What are you seeing in your local grocery stores? How has this movement affected your family? Share your stories and opinions in the comments below.